I think I'm connected now. I think I'm connected. Hello. How are you doing? I'll just get a couple more. Maybe you'll be the only one who shows up. Thanks, Megan. I appreciate that. I'm still learning how to do the live with any success. I have been. I upgraded a bunch of stuff. I upgraded my mixer. Like I have a podcast machine, which is good because I want to do podcasting anyway, and it's good to have people when you want to do interviews to have a machine. I got a new microphone because I want people to think I'm a professional. I can't stream in 4K because there's no reason, and my camera won't do anything in the middle. It won't do the 1440. It'll only do 1080 and then 2100. And I had a lot of problems with the lens last time. One of the viewers was telling me, one of the chat was telling me that I was fuzzy in the middle or whatever. But so I switched out for the original lens. Like I bought a lens that I normally do, but it's like it doesn't have the it's a prime lens, so it doesn't have any zoom to it. And then without the zoom, there's no breathing. I don't really like it when there's focus breathing. Excellent. I'm glad that the audio is good. Oh, the Sioux. Nice. I've been through there many a time, actually. I like the landscape. But I normally will try to drive that way if I have to go through that part of the province. Yeah, so as I was saying, the glass, the lens that I put on there now is the one that comes with it. It's got a zoom in it, but it can open it to 24 millimeters, which is wider. The one that I was using is a 33. And so though it's great, or a 30, excuse me, it's a 30, but it was really great. It's just an excellent lens. It's just that it wasn't, it was cutting in much tighter on the shot. And if I move this camera simply over a little bit to my right, I'll be able to get the full camera, the full Canadian flag in the shot. But I just got a second monitor today, and so I'm in the process of making the conversions. I mean, that's how these things work. I gotta get a new table, not get a new table. I have the new table, but I gotta set it up properly and make some adjustments and a lot of moving around. It's lucky that November's been a bit slow for me because like on the streaming, because it'll give me opportunity. I know there was a big day today, but I'm happy to have the monitor because then I'll figure out how to start showing the stuff. Once a few more people come in, I'll Stephen Guilbeault has quit the cabinet. Oh, I'm telling you, that makes me so happy. Not so happy like, but I'm very excited about it. I think that Stephen Guilbeault should just go join provincial politics and leave the federal stuff to those that know what they're doing. I don't like Stephen Guilbeault as a person. Like if I were to know him in real life, I don't think his personality and mine would get along very well. But the fact that he quit cabinet over Carney's decision today makes me laugh. Makes me laugh at him, makes me laugh at Carney, makes me wonder now who Debruzen is going to rely on, because she always pulled deeply on Stephen Guilbeault. They went down to Brazil together for the COP and everything like that. I think that's great that he decided to resign from cabinet. But he got his pension, so he can probably do whatever he wants. There's a rumor going around that he's going to leave in the spring anyway. No, the NDP will not be gone for good. In fact, Mark Carney's moves today ensure that the NDP will make it in through the next election. I mean, it's hard for them. They got seats in Edmonton. They have seats in Calgary federally, but Alberta's not a good spot for the NDP. all by and large. Even right now, they're trying to run a bunch of childishness where they're just trying to make it so there's 14. They're trying to recall 14 members of parliament from the legislature of the UCP because they think that they should be paid more than $125,000 a year to be a teacher in elementary school, which I find to be preposterous. There are people who spend 4 years in school and don't even make 50 G's. You're a teacher and you want to hold you're holding, essentially trying to hold people's children's hostage, right, as a bargaining chip. That's the one thing that I find the most bizarre about the situation. It's like the first generation where they expect other people's children to support them instead of the other way around. Well, Mark Carney's move today is a move of desperation, like I said in a video I put up recently. Like I put one up just a couple hours ago. It's the one it's the nail. It's the hammer that's going to shatter the whole thing. Stephen Guilbeault is just step one. There's a whole section of the Liberal Party that's going to be upset. Now, who's he going to put in Guilbeault's position? Is he going to just try to keep it filled with the secretary of, or will he try to fill the minister's position? I mean, after all, he was the guy that was given the Quebec jacket, which to the Liberal Party is an important seat. He has a couple of people that are probably qualified to take it over, but do they want it, knowing how? Because Carney is now toxic no matter which way he goes, because he's not qualified, guys. He's not qualified to do the job. He thinks it's all about being Mr. CEO. He doesn't understand how to be a politician at all, which is the difference between, Mark Carney and Danielle Smith, who I know everybody out there is trying to convince themselves that Danielle Smith made a mistake and that this pipeline memorandum of understanding is just a smokescreen. But there was never going to be any one-shot deal. What it does is it exposes Mark Carney, who is now saying something to the Liberal Party. Then he's saying something else to the voter. He's saying one thing to the people in Quebec. He's saying one thing to the people in Alberta. He's saying one thing to the investors of Brookfield. He's saying a completely different thing when he's traveling through Europe. And it's all coming in on him. He's telling BC one thing, and now it's all, it's crumbling in his hands because he simply does not have the ability to tell the truth. He can't tell the truth because the truth would expose him for what he's really after, which is to just line his pockets. When he lost all of his standing in Europe, so he came back to Canada, and then he just kind of sat in the shadows and waited for an opportunity. People gave him that opportunity. And now it's going to take even longer to undo some of the mess that he's brought onto this country. I think Danielle Smith played it perfectly. She gave him a deadline. Then he went over the deadline. She took it with grace. She smiled pretty. What I think everybody needs to hear from the deal of this Alberta thing. Excuse me just one second. I have to clear my throat. What many of the people that are commenting on it are overlooking is she got him to agree that the tanker ban is a problem. She got him to agree that the emissions cap is a problem. She got him to agree to 6 or 7 things that are all she's been saying from the very beginning, that the CBC is trying to, just 2 months ago was trying to accuse her of not being patriotic enough because she dared to say that, we should have a tanker, we should lift the tanker ban. So that she got him to agree to all that stuff is perfect fodder for a channel like mine, because now we can all see that the Liberal Party realizes that they have no idea what they're doing. The Liberal Party understands that they are in fact blocking progress in this country, which leads, like in domino effect, to ultimately to the demise of Mark Carney, like to the end of his political career. Thing about Mark Carney is that he cares more about the business world than he does about the political world. He's not trying to become a business, like a partner in a law firm or in a think tank or anything like that. His hope is to leave from this job and go back into a cushy corporate job. I think he probably would be better off to just take his earnings and go retire, honestly, because he's shattered his reputation is destroyed. In the corporate world, as I say in many of my videos, all that matters is how much money you can produce. And he might be producing money, but his reputation is going to be so tarnished that nobody's going to want to put a finger on him. Certainly not a Canadian corporation the size of Brookfield. They will give him his money. They won't rip him off or anything like that. But they're not going to give him a job. So now he has Alberta. Alberta got everything that they asked for. Yeah, it's a memorandum of understanding. And David Eby is stomping his feet and throwing a fit, which is funny. David Eby is not a person that I agree with. Of course, it's easier for David Eby to complain about Danielle Smith because he's so many billions of dollars over budget in British Columbia that it's helpful for him to have something to be distracted by. What I think Eby is mostly afraid of is because none of the deals that he talks about have been finalized, many of the people that are thinking about doing business in British Columbia are now looking at Alberta again and saying, you know what, rather than put our $15 billion investment into this, let's put our $15 billion investment into that. This will go into be a considerable amount of money in carbon capture. There's going to be a considerable amount of money exporting oil that has been cleaned carbon-wise. I mean, it's not like bitumen was very dirty to begin with. So once you clean it, it's going to be, I mean, it'll be on par with natural gas coming straight out of the ground, which is going to appease many countries around the world. And it's going to make the stock and the value of it. Now, it'll still be, Western Canada Select, so it'll still be quite thick. But we can sell it everywhere and look people in the eye and say, well, it's cleaner than anything you can buy from, say, Venezuela, for example. And that's ultimately, that might take 5 years to get there. Right now, what we have is Mark Carney standing on the hot plate, deciding who he wants to tell what story to, depending on what day of the week. Stephen Guilbeault is left. With any luck, we'll get to Brusen to leave, because that would be funny. I mean, I know she's not very politically active, but it would still be funny. The legs of Melanie Joly have been taken right out from under her. Now, who's he got? This mayor who thinks that we should leave the property values right where they are so a couple of people can stay rich while the rest of us have to pay through the nose for, and then he's got the guy that he used to work with, that's the resource minister. Otherwise, who's he have? Well, Philip Champagne. How can we forget about Philip Champagne, who will cut and run in a flash if he thinks that it's better for his career? It's not the guy I'd want to rely on to back my play, I can assure you of that. I mean, he's a fair weather friend. You can see that written all over him. He was that way when they offered him to be the finance minister for Trudeau's government. And he was like, nah, I'm good. But so I think that we have to, maybe, yeah, he might put that. I don't think so, though. That guy's pretty toxic too. That, what's his name there from Nova Scotia? Though it's too bad because he does have a pretty good riding that would have been good for the Conservative Party. Well, now he's a Liberal, but he won't put him in the front bench. He probably just leave the seat empty because they have been so quiet with Stephen Guilbeault lately. Anyway, I just want to go back to talking about my thoughts. I mean, I put up a video on my thoughts on Danielle Smith's move. The victory, the win for our side of the aisle, for the right and the center right, is the admission that all of those things, the carbon cap and the emissions cap or the production cap and the tanker ban and a couple of other things that are in there, they all had to be removed for this project to be given the go ahead, which of course makes everything Pierre Poilievre has been saying for the last, 4 years, accurate. I mean, we all knew it was accurate, but what can they say on the other side of the aisle now? What can the CBC say to that? Mark Carney himself admits that the tanker ban is a problem. He admits that the productivity cap is a problem. And the CBC can say nothing now. It's not like Carney is making it up. We know that these are the problem. We know that Danielle Smith and all of the people that were trying to convince her, they know the problem. I mean, anybody can look at the legislation and understand where the issue is. You had to put on huge blinders to think that these weren't the problems. Of course, between the budget where they had to repeal like 8 of the things that they had already put in from 2 or 3 budgets prior, and this admission that Alberta's oil and gas can't get out of the ground because of the things that the Liberal Party has done over the last few years. Then you have the people in the Liberal camp who don't care, you know, the far left, they don't care. They're just like, yeah, it might be a problem with the tanker ban, but we don't care because we just hate Alberta oil. Now they're like over in that side of the room yelling and screaming and plotting. You're going to have the people who think that there's money to be made in the Liberal Party. I mean, the Liberal Party is now going to fracture into 8 or 10 different groups. It's going to be hilarious to watch. And in the middle of it all will be Mark Carney with the province of British Columbia pulling on him, with Manitoba now saying, what about Churchill? So on and so forth. There's so many angles that Mark Carney is going to be taking heat from. He will forget who he told what to. That's how bad it's going to be. He's already dodging. I mean, he dodged the House of Commons on a Wednesday when everybody is there. Everybody is supposed to be at the House of Commons on Wednesday because they have their little party meeting. All the parties in the House of Commons, they meet on Wednesdays. That's why everything starts late on Wednesday, because in the morning they have a meeting. And he decided to not come to the House of Commons. That was why Justin Trudeau said, oh, I'll always be here on a Wednesday, even though he didn't show up a few times. But that's why he said it, because Wednesday in parliamentary setup, everybody is supposed to be there for the talk, you know, rah-rah, sis-boom-bah, and strategy meetings and all the rest of that. But he couldn't come into the House of Commons. And Pierre Poilievre called him out on it on Twitter. I should do more. I should cover more things that are on Twitter. Some of it can be pretty entertaining. I don't like covering stuff that everybody else is saturated, though. I'm like, okay, you know what? 25 people have talked about that. I'm sure everybody gets it. That's why I like live, because I can just cover so many of the things that I... Okay, this is something new I just learned. Yeah, that's not going to happen. The corporate tax won't matter. I cover that in the, entropy is going to be where Mark Carney's going to really lose his thing. I just learned right now that if you remember it, your name comes up green. So how's it going? Everybody out there? Without these glasses, which I'm not really used to wearing, I can't really read much of it. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to have it put up on the screen, and then like what I see is not what you see. Like I'm getting used to it, guys. Bear with me. Anyway, you're here for the bubbly charm. See, they talked about, I'll say it now for everybody's benefit. So he's trying to say that it'll go up 6 times to $130 a ton because he wants you to believe that right now in Alberta, they're only paying $20 a ton. Of course, they are paying, I think it's roughly what it is in Quebec is about $20 a ton. Quebec pays the smallest. Now, Quebec and British Columbia they don't have the backstop. They have their own system in place. The provincial governments put it in there. So the federal backstop didn't apply for all of these things, what they call the federal backstop. Now, Alberta has a plan, and their people were telling Ottawa that their numbers were too high. And they did the math and they did the calculations, and they came right in around $90 a ton. And they've been at $90 a ton for a couple of years. So when he says that, that's why he tried to say in the little speech, he was like, well, the effective level is going to be up about 6 times. And that he's trying to indicate to people that for some reason, the oil companies are paying $25. So that's what he needs to see. That's a great example of what he has to do to try to save his up. Like he's treading water right now, like nobody's business. He is barely holding on. You know what I mean? Like he's on with fingernails type of thing. Maybe not fingernails, but fingertips. Because he's gone to the well too many times. Like he's just told too many stories to too many different groups and with nothing to support it. A lot of them might have forgiven it if he had come through, but he hasn't come through on any of it, right? So he has all of these problems, all these people coming at him, and he has nothing to show for them, but, oh, maybe it'll happen next time. And that's you know, pretty thin. That wears pretty thin when we're talking about especially when we're talking about the Liberal government. But as money decreases in everybody's pockets, there's an article I'm working on right now that the RBC released a report saying that 80% of the families in this country are using 90% of their income just to survive, like just to get through their household monthly bills. 90% of their income. I mean, that's the kind of thing that leaves a people discouraged. They're like, forget it. What am I doing all this for? They'll say to themselves, oh man, I work my face off and then I get home and I'm flat broke. I can't even take the wife out for lunch or take the kids to the hockey game. So that's the kind of discouragement that people are facing. That's about to get really bad. Mark Carney can't avoid it. One way or the other, he's going to try and dump stupid amounts of money into the system, which would stall a recession maybe 60 days. Or he's going to do nothing and we're going to come into December and it's going to be a pretty bad recession. There's a lot of bank and financial information that is going to be measured from right now, starting today, with it being the American Thanksgiving. So then it goes into Black Friday, which is traditionally, like, Black Friday is when they, for those of you that may not be aware, they call it Black Friday as an accounting term. When you're in accounting, you're in the red. Everybody knows in the red. But when you're making money, you're in the black. So they call it Black Friday because typically by this time of the year, they've broken even and they can just start to sell things at ridiculous prices because it's all profit. That's how we arrive at that day. And that's the kind of spending that they like to measure, these economists. And so they'll start today and they'll move it right through to December 31. And they'll decide how well the economy has survived. And that's why I keep talking about Christmas, not because of the holiday, but because of the economic implications. Of course, we know in Canada that everything is out of control. The recession is too high. There are going to be many people this year who are not going to be buying traditional, like, they're not going to go for the consumer Christmas. They're going to get their children one or two gifts that they really want. And they'll just like keep as much money as they can in their pocket and spend it on food. I mean, who has the resources to do both? Most families in this country don't have the resources for both. And that negative impact is going to be felt at the latest by February. And so probably sooner, but I'm just being in the typical setting of the forecasting, it's probably going to be done by, oh, look, the chat got disconnected. Don't even know how that happened. See that? I'm looking at the camera talking, and all the while the chat got disconnected and then reconnected. It's like magic. So Mark Carney, as I was saying, is in a bad way, and he's tap dancing on a hot plate. You know, like he just has nowhere to put down any security because his entire base is gone. His entire party is gone. The only people he has is the people at Brookfield, which he can see as a big fat check. I don't even know where his wife, I don't even know if his wife's in the country. You know, like, I don't know what kind of moral support he's leaning on when nobody's looking. But I can say for certainty, like, I believe that his political support has evaporated with fairly good strength, you know? And so, again, I come back to my original position that Danielle Smith did a great job with this because she smiled at him all the while slipping the blade through his ribs, you see, which is amazing. Because, and I'll come way back to the beginning of the conversation when I started talking about the carbon capture and talking about the $90 a ton that we're talking about the 6 times, right? So because the Alberta government already has what's called the tier system, they had already made adjustments to the tier system last year, according to this new carbon capture setup. So rather than pay $90 a ton and have to invest in carbon capture, what they did was they adjusted it so that you could have credit for one, like paying for one would give you credit for both. Meaning that if you put in the infrastructure for the carbon capture, which is going to be a series of pipes, right? You can then offset that money for the paying for the tonnage. So it doesn't matter if Mark Carney wants to put it up to $130 a ton, because nobody in the province is going to be paying that for the ton, because they're all going to be investing in the carbon capture, which is, you know, it's I say it pretty easily, but it's a lot of pipe is involved in that. What they want to do is run it underground, like it's a pipe that they're going to be running essentially to halfway through the province. Like it comes down pretty far into the province because they know that they have access to the middle of the earth there. So for anybody who doesn't understand, so the carbon will come off of the gas, they'll capture it, then they're going to attach a different molecule to it that will cause it to be heavy. Once it drops down, they'll start to make it cold. They'll try to get it as close to liquid as possible, perhaps even into liquid. That will send it down to, I forget where, but I can see the map in my mind's eye, and it's pretty far down. Like it's, if you were in a car, it's easily a 90-minute drive from where they're pulling out. No, from Edmonton, probably. It was probably more like a 5-hour drive from where they pull out most of the oil. Then they're going to, so it'll come down and they're going to drop it down into the earth, right? Like way down there, a couple of miles down where they know they've accessed a cavern that they once used. And then because once it gets down there, the molecule that they attach to it will come free. And then that one will be recaptured, or they will recapture that molecule before they send the carbon down into the caverns. So as you can imagine, what I just described is a lot of money. And that money is better, these companies don't want to spend it on both. So last year, like I say, I did a story on it. Danielle Smith, I think it was last year, it could have been this year, but only way back at the beginning. Danielle Smith made adjustments to what's called the tier system to allow companies to have one or the other. So none of that money is going to go back to Mark Carney, including the stuff that Brookfield's going to be investing. That will only mean that, that the amount of money that Mark Carney is spending will take longer to pay back. Now, anybody with any kind of a business sense who's not trying to get wealthy like Mark Carney is, can see that really what we should be doing is just putting pipes in every direction, just as fast and as far as we can lay them down. Let's go. Let's get the oil to the markets like the Americans are doing. They're on their 12th pipeline, 3 of which go directly to the Gulf of Mexico and into ships. They just signed a deal with Japan, and I'm not even exaggerating, for 20 years of LNG. 20 years. We could have had that contract if somebody got out of the way on the British Columbia coast. Because the Americans are sailing it, they're taking it out of the Gulf, let's say Louisiana, Texas, putting it through the Gulf, through the Panama Canal, and then back up to Japan. We could have got it out of Canada at half the cost. And it would have been our money coming in. They would have signed a deal with us instead of signing it with Donald Trump. But that's just the kind of the government that we have. What's not? I don't know what's happening here. What is this? Why? What's wrong with the capture? You know what? I know a little bit about carbon capture, so I don't know what JFK is upset about. The science is what matters. The science of the carbon capture is utilized in all kinds of systems. It's how we capture hydrogen. It's how we capture all kinds of things before we put it into this, open air. It's much cleaner than what we do with the coal. Most people don't realize this, but when we make clean coal, what we actually do is attach a molecule to the sulfur dioxide as it comes out of the pipe, which changes it from sulfur dioxide or monoxide to dioxide, or it makes it safer as it comes out. We just shoot these molecules across and they bind together, and then we see it leaving. So we know that this technology works, and we know that Alberta makes plastic. So if we have to, we can put it all into a drum. Now, if you're new to the channel, you need to appreciate that I don't believe that carbon capture is necessary. But if it makes the people in the environmentalists calm down, why not? What does it matter? We give some people some jobs, we create some industry, we sell our oil, and everybody's calmed down. They can now go back to talking about all of the Chinese coal-fired electrical plants. They can go back to talking about anything. Just leave Canada alone, because we're tired of it, most of us. And I'll look up what JFK Jr. is saying about these pipes, but I do speak a little bit of science myself, and I'm telling you that the concept is solid. The concept is hail, as they would say. So to think that it's not going to work is not accurate. We know from the way Norway captures it, and Norway captures all of their own, all of France's, a little bit in the Netherlands. Like Norway has got a well established in the North Sea. They capture it and then they take it out to an oil well or an oil platform, excuse me, out in the North Sea, and they dump it down right in underneath the bottom of the ocean, I guess. And they're fairly adept at it. They're pretty good at it. Now it's carbon. So if I had it my way, what we would do with it is bottle it up and then give it to people that are trying to get greenhouses started in their backyard. And they can have all the carbon they want, CO2 they want for their tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce and whatever it is you want to grow. Help yourself. You can have it. It's free. But we're not there yet. People are still quite hysterical. People don't understand because of the psyop that the government puts on them, because they don't know any better, so they believe whatever fear the CBC and the CTV tell them. I mean, that's the secret to the propaganda arm of the government. They have to say the same thing over and over again. For those of you that might not get it, I can simplify it for you. So you're listening to a song and you don't like that song. Not only do you not like the song, you don't even like the singer. But you hear that song and you hear it again and you hear it again. And the next thing you know, you're having a shower and you're singing that song. And that's essentially how it works. Phil, how are you, buddy? Hey, Sterling, what do you think about the censorship bill they are trying to pass before the holidays? Which bill is that? Am I out of... Which bill are they trying to put through? Can you tell me, Phil, what bill the number is? The C8 or C9? $63. Okay, I'm going to look it up. Donnie, I'm trying to get my stuff in. You know what? I broke down. I bought another monitor, so I'm one step closer. I'll look at the SIL C63. Isn't that? Oh, of course. It's a Mercedes. I thought 63 got canceled. They reintroduced it? Oh. Yeah, that's the one the online's harm bill is now, what, 8 or something? Yeah, it died. This guy, Arif, he's not even a politician anymore. Well, I can tell you, Phil, I do not care for censorship in any way, shape, or form. And there's absolutely no way in the world that you're going to try to convince me that anything that we can do on the internet can't be undone by somebody else. All they can do is try to control everything that you have to say. That's not going to... What I find about the far left is they need to manipulate. They're excellent at manipulation. They're not very bright, but they're excellent at manipulation. That's the only skill set that they have. So every time they say something that involves children, while they turn their back on people being arrested and then not be given a 1-year mandatory minimum, I don't believe it at all. Not even for 1 second. If you want your children to, yeah, I that's what I thought. Like it's 8. I think it's 8. Maybe it's 9. They took out big sections of it and put it back together because they're psychopaths, guys. They're not interested in governing for you. They're only interested in governing for themselves. The idea will be that everything you have to say will somehow harm them. And when you have to realize that the same government that allows people charged with SA to get out on bail, the same people that allow individuals who are charged with crimes against, children or that have material of 8-year-olds in scantily clad, and they allow them out on bail. There's absolutely no way in the world you're going to try to convince me that anything that they are doing is for the good of anything at all, except for them. Because if that were the case, you would be going after the ones that we can see right in front of us. You would be going after the people that we know were caught red-handed with material that is clearly only one name that goes with that. I don't want to say because I don't know how YouTube will feel about it, but you know what I mean. And then the mandatory minimums come into play, and Mark Carney's all like, "Oh no, the Supreme Court overturned that, and that's okay. I'm going to ignore that." All the while trying to shove down this bill of Online Harms Act or whatever the new version of it is, because they think that somehow that's going to protect them. They think that it's going to give them better options and give them more ability to snowball us, right? To make us think that there's nothing going on. It's all good here. That's how communists work. You have to remember, there's the Marxist Karl Marx, who right now Mark Carney says is one of the greatest economists ever, which I find to be very disturbing. It spawned three ideologies, right? One came to surface in 1930s Germany under the name of, under a guy with a funny mustache. And it's important to remember that that party, I know everybody wants you to believe that it's a right-wing party, but it's not. The proof is in the name. Never mind anything else. Just look at the name of that party. The term that you hear about commonly was a nickname. The actual name was the German Workers' Socialist Party. Workers' Socialist Party. Who does that sound like? Then there was the other one, which is Mussolini, and the one that was in the 1917 Russian rebellion. All three of those ideologies are tied to Marxism. One of the first steps that they do is control the media. That's step one, because they don't want you to know anything that they don't agree with. Schwangster, great to see you live again. Thank you. Earlier today, I offered a bet of $5 that the pipeline won't happen. It's been 8 hours, still no takers. Your thoughts? Well, in its current iteration, the pipeline's not going. It's not going to happen immediately. It will happen. I would say. Okay, so next step, it's going to happen. There's going to be so many pipelines coming out of there, or the country's going to collapse. I mean, there's going to be no choice. It's not going to happen like in 2026, because the government will begin to drag their feet, and then there'll be a federal election, and hopefully the Canadian people will be smart enough to stop telling themselves that this time the Liberals will be different. However, the proponents will come out next. Like Mark Carney was trying to make a joke with all of these business people he was talking to in Calgary today. And he was like, "Oh, does anybody here want to be your proponent?" And nobody said much, but the whole room was filled with oil executives. And they absolutely are going to be figuring out how much money they can put in once they have a deeper look at this memorandum of understanding. And once they have a deeper look at how much money they can take back from these British Columbia investments. It's all these guys do, right? That this is their job. So I believe the pipeline will happen, though I don't believe that it will happen under a Liberal government in the next year, because the Liberal government is about to start taking big pieces out of itself. They were holding it together, and now with the resignation of Guilbeault, he's going to be like a catalyst, to take a word from Mark Carney. It's going to encourage other people, maybe not necessarily to resign, but certainly to have the backbiting, right? Because now we have Erskine Smith in Toronto. We have Guilbeault in Quebec. It'll be the beginning of the unraveling. So next will come an election. Now, Danielle Smith has a lot of drive. She has a lot of money. She has a lot of vision. She's a smart lady. So she probably already had these proponents lined up. Now she will do the little dance where there's going to be some sort of approval to get onto the major projects list. And that's, even if it gets that far, that's where it will begin to be obvious that the Carney government is intentionally trying to get in the way of it again. Then how that plays out will again depend on the voter. I don't understand why Canadians think poverty is sexy, because I can tell you right now, my experiences with poverty, which are pretty profound, none of it was very sexy. I mean, I guess if you consider that you don't get to eat much and you're very slender, I suppose there's that. That's one aspect I get. But for me, there's no way in the world that, hold on. Well, like I was saying at the beginning, Donnie, Danielle Smith got him to agree that the tanker ban is in the way, that the emissions cap is a problem. There's a lot of things that he admitted to that the conservative side of the aisle, like whether it be Poilievre or whether it be Danielle Smith or whether it be Scott Moe, have been trying to get the media to admit. We know that there's 9 laws, and we hear everybody mock, like David Eby try to make fun of that. But today, in the memorandum of understanding, Mark Carney admitted that there's laws that are blocking the productivity of Alberta. That is the big victory that came out of today. That is the thing that we have to take away from this as a serious victory. This is a flat out win, because now they can no longer deny it. The CBC can't say it. The Global can't say it. Nobody can say it. Mark Carney, the leader of the country, the prime minister, the leader of the Liberal Party, signed his name to a document that admits that these rules, these pieces of legislation, interfere with the economic prosperity of Alberta. That is the big win. Now, all we need to do is have somebody from the oil and gas industry to come forward and say, yeah, we have a conglomeracy. We are prepared to consider it. And then we get to watch David Eby's head spin right off his shoulders. That'll be funny. But I don't believe it'll get that far. I believe that Mark Carney can't hold it together much longer. Like, I truly believe that it's falling, like he's trying to grasp, smoke, because he's just told too many people, Donnie, too many different things. And they're all turning to him saying, hey, pony up right now. Like, follow through on what you told me. And the conservatives are just laughing. So I don't know necessarily that it's going to expedite the process of the pipeline, but I do believe that it's going to expedite the process of the collapse of the Liberal government. I absolutely believe that. And once we can get the Liberal government out of the way, there's no rabbit for them to pull out of the hat this time. Once we can get the Liberal government out of the way, we oh, welcome to Clerk, Pam. Thank you. I appreciate that. Once we can get the Liberal government out of the way, then we can repeal the bills, and then we can put in 5 or 6 pipelines, because I really believe the one that we should be focusing on is the one into Churchill. I get that the Asian market is massive, and that they will take every drop we can give them and all of that kind of stuff. And David Eby trying to convince me that there's one pipeline that's already running and somehow it's not at capacity. Of course, what he leaves out of the argument is that it's at 96% or 97%, something like that. And the only way that they can get it to capacity, this is a staggering fact. When I read this, I couldn't believe it. The only way they can get it to full capacity is if they add in an additive which makes it more slippery. This is oil, and it's the thickest oil on earth. We use it in ships and many industrial applications. Of all the oil we pull out of the ground, this style of oil is the thickest. And this stuff is moving so fast in that pipeline, it's causing friction to slow down the speed of the oil, and they have to put in an additive so that they can get more of it there faster, and then it will reach capacity. That blew me away. I was like, man, that stuff is just moving. And I have a little video of it. There's a video in Dubai. There's a museum or whatever. You can go to it, and they show you how much oil they make every second. It comes in, then it leaves, and it comes in, then it leaves. I have a little video, and as I got the second monitor today, I'm pretty sure that next week I'll be able to, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be Monday, I'll be able to do a screen share. I just have to figure out, I want to do the steps, and I don't like to do these things live. You know that. So the only person, I know everybody out there thinks that Danielle Smith got rocked, but I think she's playing 4D chess over here. Excuse me for 1 second. I believe that she got what she wanted, and that's why she finished her speech by saying, I know it's the beginning, but let's just try to look at it from the bright side, and, let's all be part of the team and everything like that. I mean, those are my words, not I'm paraphrasing. Let's start afresh from right now kind of situation, because she got from him that admittance. She got him to admit that his policies are in the way. His policies are the problem. And if they don't change those policies, then there's no way in the world that Danielle Smith can take the responsibility. It'll all go back on a Mark Carney. And that's where they get upset, right? Like that's where the Liberal Party falls to pieces, because some sections are upset that he even admitted to it. Some sections are upset that he admitted they made a mistake. I just don't think that it is a humiliation ritual. I think that Danielle Smith outplayed him, and I believe that it's only phase one. Like it's just the opening moves. She has been stringing him along all year. She got him to sign to admit that he's his policies are the problem. Now we just got to exploit that crack. We just got to bash it wide open. So she can take that now. And all she needs to do is get 5 or 6 of these companies together to create a small little corporation that'll just say, yes, together we're a conglomerate and we're willing to back this pipeline. And then, like I said, that'll make David Eby lose his mind. But they'll have to put it on this ridiculous, nation building projects list. So once they get it on there, how fast are they going to be moving it? Are they going to help? Are they going to hinder? All of that stuff will again be just ammunition that we can fire at Mark Carney and the Liberal Party, because they have this memorandum of understanding where in it they admit that they have been the problem from the very beginning. How can they continue to be a problem in any way, shape, or form? Mark Carney is desperately going to try to blame David Eby or try to blame somebody from the First Nations, or he's going to say it's out of my hands because it's with the major projects list. Okay. Well, I did read that article. Like, I see what you're saying. Expansion is important. Like, I see what you mean. 95 capacity, it would make sense that it was 100. But I did read this, like, from the pipeline people. They were like, we're considering adding, like, this is right off the Trans Mountain's website or whatever they're called now. We're considering putting in this additive because then we can get it to flow a little faster. And in my head, I was just like, are you kidding me? This is grease. This is oil. How much friction? And then I realized that 1 million barrels a day. I mean, imagine the kind of speed that requires to go for 1 million barrels a day. That's almost 42,000 barrels an hour. So you're talking serious. I mean, that's just shooting out of there. And then I got laughing in my head because I thought science is awesome, which is why I believe that we should be pushing the carbon capture. People don't understand that the carbon capture is the garlic, it's the cross, it's the stake in the heart for them. Because no matter what they say, we can just say, yeah, but we'll capture it. No matter what they say, yeah, no problem, we're going to capture it. And then they got nothing. Their whole argument is predicated on the idea that there's going to be some sort of catastrophe, that the whole entire world is going to all of a sudden simultaneously combust, even though China puts more crap up into the air in a minute than this entire country does in a year. But you know what? One thing we've learned, they don't want to listen. They're not interested in the truth. They're certainly not interested in the science. So we have this process where we capture the carbon, and it captures quite a bit of it because they understand. Now, this is all just about the molecules, right? We make the molecules heavy, then the molecules follow a pipeline. We pump the pipeline down into the ground. We seal the hole, job done. Because that's where the carbon is. It's already in the ground. So how can you complain? Now, I guess in a perfect world, we would put it in a big pipe and we would send it to SpaceX, and SpaceX would take the carbon and fire it at the sun. I don't know. However, for the short term, being able to say to them, no, we can capture the carbon, should be enough to make them all sit down and be quiet. Should make them realize that their whole entire argument is no longer valid. So if that's what it takes to get them out of the way, then I say, let's do it. It's kind of like when you're breaking up with somebody and you're like, you know what, I don't care, just keep the couch, just leave me alone. Like that kind of situation. Like it's the same idea in my mind. I know that, like, I understand the environment very well, and I can tell you that I don't. You're not going to convince me that you understand the Earth's weather patterns because we've been tracking weather for 100 years. You know, you know what I mean? However, if it shuts them up, it shuts them up, and it gives people jobs. So what difference does it make? If we make this entire infrastructure and then 10 years from now we realize that it's not having an impact on how that much spew up into China, they can decide then what to do with it. What we need to do is get the oil out of the ground right now. So we have to start, like you heard Danielle Smith say, it's just the beginning. It's the opening salvo. The admission that the offshore tanker ban is a problem and the production cap is a problem from the people who created the tanker ban and the emissions cap, that is the win, guys. That's the victory. Because now we have it in writing that the Liberal government is the problem. Now we have it in writing, an admission of guilt from the leader of the Liberal Party, from the Prime Minister, the leader of the party that drafted this horrendous legislation. And that's, I believe, what we need to see. I don't think that it's not putting shovels in the ground, but it absolutely has got people's attention, and it absolutely has taken the wind out of the sails of people like Stephen Guilbeault. What's her name? DeBruzen there. I forget her. Julie DeBruzen, which is really step one. Now there's nothing in the way. Now we know that those problems are there. And now we just got to deal with this lady in Calgary on the major projects list. But the important part is that we can now talk about putting projects in anywhere, as long as we add a carbon capture element. So we can be doing it in mining, we can be doing it in forestry, we can be doing it anywhere we want. Because the government, the people who are driving this horrendous idea of the environmentalists, they've admitted that carbon capture is fine. In fact, Mark Carney himself has invested millions of dollars into the carbon capture project in Alberta. If he thinks it's a good process, if he thinks it's going to work, why can't the people who support Mark Carney think that it's going to work? Which, of course, is the entire industry. I mean, one thing that I left out of the talk was how one of the things that the reason, like Danielle Smith mentioned, that it was all about making sure they could get data centers up and running in Alberta. Data centers require enormous amounts of electricity. Everybody understands that now. But what people forget is that they require enormous amounts of water because they get really hot, really, really hot. And yes, I get that they're making improvements, but you're talking essentially about let's call it a 10-story building with nothing but servers in it. So there's a lot of water that needs to be involved in this. And that opens doorways for places like Manitoba and places like northern Saskatchewan, who might not necessarily have oil running around, but certainly have a lot of fresh water that they could be utilizing to drop in a data center. And then we need to run the electricity, right? And there's, these are all good jobs, is what the point I'm trying to make. Whether you be studying hydroelectricity to move the water through, whether you be the guy that does an installation on all of the servers, whether you be the individual who digs up the trees and then replants them over there, it doesn't matter. It's all jobs. It's all development. If we can get the government out of the way, we can get people with the money to come up and take care of that for us almost straight away. I get that the Americans have gotten a big head start on us, but that doesn't mean that we can't also take a piece. That doesn't mean that we can't also participate. And one of the things that this country has in great abundance is fresh water. I mean, we got more fresh water in this country than most of the world put together. Brazil, if we take Brazil out of it, then it is the world put together. So we really should be considering these data centers. We really should be considering small modular reactors. I find it very ironic that the country doesn't realize the potential of jobs that we could be creating if we simply just became a country of hydroelectricity, where you need the hydroelectricity to power the center itself. And then you take the hydroelectricity to cool the place down. And then you take the hydroelectricity and you figure out how to, ultimately, in my mind, one of the greatest ideas I had, I don't know if you could pull it off, but we could do electrolysis in the water, which would separate the hydrogen. We could then ignite the hydrogen to power the water to turn the turbine. I mean, we could basically make it self-contained. It'd be excellent. But I can't say that I can pull it off. Like I don't know that I could. I don't know how to do it specifically. I mean, maybe there's some engineer out there that knows how to pull it off. I know that in theory it works. I just don't know the principles behind it, because ultimately you want to put the hydrogen into liquid, and there's a step in the middle. But it could very well be self-contained, which would be perfect. Oh, thank you, Cindy. Hit the like button, Cindy said, $6.99. Donnie, you sent her up north on a 5-month contract as what? Like as a teacher? I don't know. I wasn't paying that much attention. Alberta has a ton of experience with instant startup mega project logistics. Once given the go-ahead, you'd be surprised at how fast things can move. Well, that's the thing, eh? I agree with you on that. Bornologist? Yeah. I have traveled this nation from one side to the other. I've done it when I was young. I've done it when I was older. I did it mostly by myself. And I can assure you that the one thing this country has is the entrepreneurial spirit. Yes, most of them want to be able to put in their hard day's work and go home and relax. They all want the weekend off, and everybody knows that if the Olympics are on and if it's the Winter Olympics and the hockey's on, forget about it. I'm calling in sick that day. But for the most part, we get things built. We go into the coldest parts of the earth and drop a house and put a driveway there and then take care of our own snow removal. I mean, the idea that the legislation passed down from Ottawa is the only thing that's stopping us from being the productive people that we want to be is, I think, the thing that we really need to see. And that's why I keep laughing at Mark Carney, because it's falling apart for him. And I'm so glad we're here to enjoy it, you know. George Peter Gaddis, $2. Every Canadian becomes self-published author business. Outfitting, fishing, hunting, float planes. Okay. Yeah. I know the the industry. Like I can't say I fly a plane, but I know what you mean. Like, you know, your buddy flies in, he's there for 5 days hunting and fishing, whatever it happens to be. Oh. Even though, am I back? Even though it says excellent connection, boom, they cut me off anyway. Well, Canada has a lot of silver in it. Am I back? Give me a one if I'm back. I guess I'm not back. Okay, I am back. Good. That's it. I don't know what happened. I was talking to Donnie about how his daughter must have had a blast living up there in the woods, going fishing and everything like that. I'm like, I get the job. I don't know I can't fly a plane, but I've been in the deep woods, you know. Which is why, again, now that you've brought it up, I talk about the magnetic levitation, because most people don't realize that in northern Canada, the roads just end. They just stop. And they stop, and then you have to get on a plane to get anywhere. And that plane is not very big because it has to land, you know, like people don't get it. They just never lived outside the city. I was watching a cabinet meeting, or not, excuse me, not a cabinet meeting, a committee meeting today, because their committee's talking about the Environmental and Sustainable Committee is talking about the EV mandate. And they had this guy on there. You should have seen the lunacy in this man's eyes. Like, he was a hardcore fanatic. He's like, oh no, the EV mandate is going to save 11,000 lives, and the whole wide world is going to, and I'm like, man, you are talking like a guy who's never been outside the city in your entire life. I mean, you can't expect me to believe that you're going to drive a car 300 kilometers to your groceries and it's, you know, running on battery power. You get any kind of resistance from the ground underneath you, from the snow, and all of a sudden the life of that battery is cut in half. but he's not paying attention to anything like that. He's living in Toronto. He's like, why can't they just take the bus? You know, like in his mind. So when you're talking about flying people to go fishing, and I recommend everybody give it a try. I admit you should probably try it in warmer weather. I wouldn't recommend, May, because the black flies are just moving clouds, and you're constantly spitting them out. But if you go closer to the fall, the weather's great, and you don't have to worry too much. No, I mean, you always have to worry about the environment, but you don't have to worry as much. You should all check it out. It's a lot of fun. It's good to go. Even if you don't like to fish, you can canoe. It's great photography, good painting. One of the problems I have with Canada, one of the things that I disagree with the way our government does things, is we're all like nestled right up against the United States of America. We should just spread it all out. That's one of the things, like Alberta is a good example of that, right? Edmonton is in the northern part of the province. The southern city is Calgary. And even them, they're not that close to the border with the United States. Most of the rest of the country, though, they're right down close to the border. So there's a lot of room to move to, is what I'm trying to say. But how do you get there? You can't just say, I'm going to take a float plane to work in the morning, unless you're the guy who flies the plane, I suppose. So we have to build the infrastructure. If you build it, they will come. Everybody remembers that movie. Hello, Marianne. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I will make you, all the people that are joining, I will make you an owl later, because owls are awesome. And they suit my purpose. So that's my position. I think that I don't agree with censorship in any way, shape, or form. Right now I'm taking a look at how I might be able to rewrite the Constitution, because everybody in Canada thinks of the Constitution like the American one, but ours is actually 4 different documents that were pieced together from various legislation. The British North America Act and things like that they're just piecemeal cut in. 3 of them are actually acts in council, which is just people sitting in there making decisions. We need to finalize it, and we need to have freedom of speech and protection on what we can say. We need to have that itemized. Joey Smallwood, who is it? Is it Joey Smallwood? No, I got that wrong. That's Newfoundland. It's Joseph Howe in Nova Scotia. He's Canada's. Joseph Howe's an interesting example for free speech in Canada, because back when it was just Nova Scotia, like when Nova Scotia was part of its own outfit, when the 4 of them were all separate, I believe, he made articles about the corruption of the government. He was a newspaper author, and they charged him with sedition, and they wanted to kill him. Like, they literally wanted to have like they wanted to like execute, I guess is the word, you know what I mean? That was what you would get for that charge. We still did that in this country. And so, hi, Cindy, welcome. Thank you. Jehovah's thickness. That's funny. In the U.S., $5. In the U.S., senators are elected. Do you think senators should be elected in Canada, or do you think there should be a different way they're picked? I'm going to read Totem 888 first, because I have opinions on the Senate. Jehovah's thickness. I found the steel for the magnetic rail to Churchill with enough to go from coast to coast. R.C. Lamoureux. That was for $5. I will take a screenshot of that, and I will look up that quote later. That would be good. Yeah, that would be good. So to come back to it, Jehovah's Witness, thickness, excuse me. I do not agree with the Senate that we have in Canada being selected and having lifetime memberships. I have already said, and I'll say it again, that we need to change the way that we select our Senate. I believe in the elected Senate system that they have in the United States. But people say, yeah, because in Canada, we have the king, right? So people forget that the highest ranking member of parliament in Canada, the highest ranking individual in Canada, is the governor general. Every province has a lieutenant governor general. The Governor General represents the King, King Charles. The King Charles approves every piece of legislation, technically, that we have in this country. Because every piece of legislation that we have in this country has to be signed off on by the Governor General. Now, for those of you that might not understand, the idea is this. We have the Commons, the House of Commons, the house that is green. It is the common people, and that is why it's called Parliament. And that's why I go with owls, because a collection of owls, to anybody not an American, is called a parliament. And I say that because in America, a collection of owls is known as a Congress, but you can see the similarity. Then the king said, no, but I need to be represented. There was a war. And then he said, no, but I need to be represented. I'm not going to let the common people tell me what to do. And he created what's called the Senate. Now in Britain, they are handpicked by the king, lords of the land, and they are given positions in the Senate. In Australia, which also, that's, how we can't necessarily, people will say that if we talk about copying the American system. However, in Australia, which is copied from the Westminster system, they elect their senators. And they have two House of Commons for expedience, but they elect their senators. And I believe that Canada should be electing their senators. When Trudeau took over, he said, no, we're going to do this Senate reform. He then abandoned that, surprise, surprise, Liberal government, and handpicked like 80 new senators who now are all going to sit there for the remainder of their lives. And I think that Canada has to have an elected Senate. Like, that's my position on that. So I believe that we should have them just the way what we could do. See, unfortunately, the Senate is only half in Canada. The Senate is only half the representatives of the House. So there's less election, there's less representation. We would have to reform the boundaries, or at least give a 1-to-1. Then we could just simply hold an election on off years, 2 years, boom, Senate, or we could have it all at once, though that might create some chaos in the transition times. But to answer your question, Jehovah's Thickness, I do believe that we should be electing our Senate. I do not believe that we should have some person handpick them, because now anytime the Conservatives try to get something through the Senate, they can stall it for a pretty long time. Now, they can't veto it ultimately. They have to approve it eventually. The process is we pass, it goes through committee, then we send it to the Senate. The Senate says, no, we got to make changes, or we don't agree with this, that, and the other. They send it back. If we don't agree with their suggestions, the House, we don't have to accept any of it. We send it back. Then they can send it back again. And then after that second time they returned it, they can't return it again, and it has to be passed into law. But that can really drag out. That can last a long time. So I think that rather than worry about your political vision of this country, you should be worried about the people of the country. And the only way that you're going to be worried about the people of the country is if you're responsible to the people of the country. Most of the people that were handpicked by the Liberal government to be senators, they feel their first loyalty is going to be to the Liberal Party, not to the people of Canada, certainly not to the provinces that they represent. And that's my position. I think that we need a constitution that guarantees the right to bear arms, and a constitution that guarantees the right to freedom of speech. And we need a Senate that's elected. We have a lot of issues inside of this country that we could change if we simply decided to become politically active, in my opinion. I mean, I get that I'm just one guy, but in my opinion, Canadians should be more worried about the removal of freedom of speech. Because as a person who was looking at this a long time, I can remember hearing about a guy in Yugoslavia one time behind the wall. He asked a question and they put him in jail for 20 years because he asked a question. When you don't have freedom of speech, you have to remember that the freedom of speech to me is not about saying swear words and all that foolishness. I believe the freedom of speech is the right to say the truth to power, which of course is the thing that bothers the far left the most. You tell them exactly what you think. I'll give you a good example, but it's not related to politics, but it's you can understand. Everybody out here should be able to understand it. It's not the pants that make you look wide, or it's not the shirt or whatever it happens to be. If you say that to somebody, you know darn well there's going to be a problem. However, I'm not saying to you that that's the wise thing to say to your significant other. I'm just trying to lay that out for you in a way that makes sense. So when you're a politician, if you have the authority to throw a tantrum every time I tell you something you don't want to hear, then ultimately what happens is people get afraid to tell you something. If you punish everybody that comes at you with the truth, people will stop coming at you with the truth. That's the secret to the American system. They have capitalism and they have free enterprise. Free enterprise allows them to open their mind any way they want and say what they think. They might not be accepted, they might not be correct, but they absolutely have the right to try, which gives them the ability to express themselves creatively, which of course allows for invention, and with invention comes prosperity. The little one is there. I can't find a plant. I had a plant in it, but it just didn't make it. I don't know what I did wrong. I keep telling myself I got to get a plant to put in it, and every time I see one, the problem is not the small plant; it's the pot doesn't fit in it. So I'm thinking about breaking down and going like right into, there's a flower, like a plant shop not too far from me. I'm like, I should just go in there and get them to give me a plant and typed out how to look after it, because like a lot of I have a window here, right? And this light you see hanging from the ceiling, that's a grow light. So the problem is, how much of it can get, the plant has to be able to get only southern exposure light, but I still have it. I really like it. In my mind, one day I'm going to have a plant. It's going to look dead sexy, Thanks for asking. Within 2 weeks, Canada will leave the Commonwealth. This is from Totem 888. A new constitution will have to be developed. Politicians and bureaucrats and media are all going to jail. Now that would be something. We can leave the Commonwealth. There is a process for it. They don't even call it that. Like Bermuda, Bahamas, they just did it last year. They left the British Commonwealth. So we can do it if we have the political will. Unfortunately, we don't seem to have the political will. And changing the Senate for me is a really simple process if we can remove ourselves from the Westminster system. But when you talk that way, you have to think about the worst case scenario, which of course is internal conflict, which is never nice. It's always nasty. And in this country, it would look like Spain's internal conflict if it ever happened. Yeah. Yeah. What's funny? I'll tell you, Donnie, I'm a very tall fella, and I've been hearing that my whole life. The friendly giant, people call me. Look up, look way up. Anyway, since I was a kid. That and Big Bird, but that one didn't stick around. Anyway, I would hate Totem. I would hate to think of the idea of it not being a peaceful transition. I mean, we would have to give those senators something, I suppose, a little stipend or a bank account or something like that. But to do it without having it as a peaceful transition in the country of Canada would create so much hardship for people because there's just too many sides. That's the issue. We have, you take a city like Toronto. I mean, if you've ever been to Toronto, then you know this. But if you've never been, there's no race on earth that is not represented in Toronto. I mean, I don't care where they're from. I mean, maybe if you're one of those people from the middle of a jungle that only found society like a couple of years ago, maybe. But otherwise, there's at least one person from there in the city of Toronto. So if there was all of a sudden a conflict over whether or not we should separate from the crown, like a rebellion style or a civil war style, places like Toronto would just become like the Spanish Civil War, where there was like 5 sides until the one guy came in and sort of straightened all that out. And I'm not saying to you that was good. I'm just saying to you that the chaos and the madness that can come would be amplified 10 times in a country like ours, where once the civil authority breaks down, people would be, they would be pulled off into identity politics. And then all of a sudden it's, it's a 12-sided war, which, wow. However, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try to make the Senate an elected body. They would be much more effective that way. I don't know if there's a way, because like I say, we don't have to use the American model. In Australia, they have an elected Senate, so they could use that model. Like we could maybe get an idea from their model. I don't know. It's just it's a lot to try to wrap my head around. Excuse me one second. If we had stability in this country, we could start to talk about it. But right now, everybody's worried about where they're going to eat. And that's kind of something that Mark Carney should be ashamed of. If I was a liberal politician, I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror. Like I simply would not. You're bringing hardship to people, and you come in and try to gaslight us into the cameras. I mean, Melanie Joly got so upset in committee, she was like, I can leave. It's like, okay, lady, you're the ranking minister and you're throwing a temper tantrum. Oh, yeah, no, this country's in I never said you were delusional. Well, it's nice to meet you, RC. Neat Totem. $2 says, I'm not delusional. I'm RC Lamoureux. Okay. Marianne, drink something. It runs out. It goes ... Quebec for $5. Quebec is well on its way to independence. They have put into motion to dissolve their ties to the crown. They were discussing it with the APP. Okay, here's the thing that everybody overlooks. Now, I understand. I've listened to the arguments lots of times. I can tell you exactly the geographical history of Canada. I can tell you exactly why it is in Quebec they swear so much from church words. I can tell you all sorts of different things about all leading to the separation of Quebec. Most people who watch this channel know that I have very little patience. If we, I don't mean very little patience, but I mean, every time I hear Quebec say, I want to separate, I'm not one of those people that are like, oh no, stay. I'm like, okay, you know what? I've heard enough. Get out. But that's just because I don't have the do it, you know what I mean? Or don't, but stop trying to hold me hostage with my political gain. I mean, you stop the pipeline going through there. That costs people other hardships in this country. And I just feel like when we live in a country that if you go into downtown Toronto, you can hear 15 languages in 15 strides, the idea that you want to separate because you want to maintain French seems a bit flimsy to me. However, if we were to look at it if I just remain my neutrality, I can tell you that the thing that everybody in Quebec overlooks, the absolute thing that slips their mind and slips their notice, is the St. Lawrence River. Now, even if for whatever reason they separate from Canada, the only reason that the French lost to the English in the first place was because the English wanted access to the St. Lawrence River. They took control of the St. Lawrence River because the Hudson Bay would freeze all the time and they couldn't get all of the wealth out of there, the beaver pelts and all the rest. But they could get it down into Montreal, onto a ship, maybe stop in Halifax, and on your merry way. People think that the war was about Quebec in Quebec, but really they took Cape Breton first because the war was never about Quebec. It was always about the river, this St. Lawrence River. They said, we have the river. It's, Canada in the 1700s, there was, 10 million beaver pelts and, 45 guys on canoes. So there wasn't a big population. They just said, we have the river. You can have the rest. And that's exactly how Quebec stayed in the hands of the French in those days. And that's fine. But now you come forward and you say, oh, no, we want to separate from Canada. And I'm like, okay, so I tell you the same thing I tell the Albertans. So you got to have a post office. You got to have a bank. You got to have a bank note. You have to have something that you can put toward that bank note, like to support it. Quebec leaves all the resources in the ground and expects Alberta to bail them out. So there are things in there that they don't necessarily haven't thought their way through, including the fact that there's no way in the world that the Americans are going to give up control of the St. Lawrence River. They're not going to be paying a toll to sail past the island of Montreal, for example, which means that they will either annex sections of Quebec to make sure that the St. Lawrence River stays open, or something even, more fundamentally ridiculous. Now, what is important to look at is that whenever I hear them marching in the streets about having separation, and whenever I hear them talking that way, I know that the government in Quebec City, the provincial government, is in trouble, because that's what the provincial government in Quebec does. Every time there's a problem, they have a scandal, their numbers are low. Doesn't matter which government it is, does not matter. Whatever government's in Quebec City, the provincial government, as soon as they have a problem, a scandal, or their poll numbers get low, their support gets low, they bring somebody out to start screaming about separation, independence. And then people start to walk around in the streets, because that gives the media something to discuss. If Quebec wants to leave, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens to the city of Montreal. I believe that we should carve out a new province with Montreal as its center. I think that would make everything a lot more smooth. Not to mention the idea that Quebec City has a fairly strong command of the St. Lawrence River, and the St. Lawrence River is the reason that people have to understand Detroit is there with the cars because the steel is there in Northern Ontario, and it's all heavy. So we have to put it on boats, and then we sail it up to St. Lawrence and off to markets. So though they're welcome to try, I don't know that necessarily it's going to work out the way that they envision. Not to mention that the northern part of Quebec is not under the administrative control of Quebec City. It's under the administrative control of Nunavut. So already the province is not nearly as big as they want you to believe that they are. To say that you're going to cut yourself off from the vine because you just want to be able to speak French seems like shooting yourself in the foot, or cutting your nose off to spite your face, or whatever those expressions are. Plus, I don't like the fact that Quebec is always getting specialized treatment from Ottawa. I feel like they get, undue amounts of treatment. They get undue amounts of equalization payments. I mean, if you gave even one annual equalization payment to Prince Edward Island or Newfoundland, you might change the whole entire landscape of those provinces over in 1 year. But Quebec takes that money and then expects next year for the same thing to happen. And they do so because of the influence they have with the Liberal government in the House of Commons in Ottawa. So, yeah, let them. I just don't think that it's going to work out the way that they believe that it's going to work out, because they don't have any money and they don't have any idea the strategic value of the St. Lawrence River. But the Americans do. Like, the Americans see that that's an important piece of water. I mean, if you're not looking at the importance and the significance of the St. Lawrence River, then you're not necessarily looking at the whole entire strategic importance of the country itself. That's why I tell people we could be putting shipyards in Northern Ontario, because we can put them in the water there and sail them to wherever they need to be stationed. We just simply sail them up. Ever since the 50s, when they dredged it out at Cornwall, you can simply sail right on through. And so we really have an opportunity to build the ships right where the steel is. Now, I say Churchill because I want to have the icebreakers ripped out wide open, because I understand that Greenland is under the control of another country, and that most of the world is idolizing the passage. It's not necessarily that they want to spend time in Nunavut. It's that they shave 2 weeks if they move it from Amsterdam to Hong Kong, 2 weeks shorter. So that's a very lucrative route. That's a very lucrative thing, and we could capitalize on that. But as it stands right now, the Russians or the Chinese or the Dutch, I suppose, could just simply sail up there into one of these little inlets and drop down an entire base. I'm not even sure Canada would know about it. That's how bad our surveillance up there is. We'd probably have to get the Americans to tell us. So this country's in a bad way, primarily because we allow people to say things like, oh, well, if I don't get my way, I'm going to stomp my feet and I'm going to separate. And I just think if you don't want to be part of the gang, then please feel free to leave. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. But I'm a little bit harsher than some people. I admit it. I'm not always warm and fuzzy. That's mostly because I don't have the patience for that kind of foolishness. Like, we're all in this together, right? Like, so if you have an issue with me because I don't speak French, which having lived in Quebec, I can assure you they had an issue with me because I don't speak French. That seems to be very trivial in my mind. That seems to be the same idea as if I don't have blue eyes, or if I don't have curly hair, or it's just such a ridiculous concept to say to me that I have to communicate in your language, even though my language is the language that is most of the world. So Quebec, they're free to leave, but I don't think it's going to play out the way that they imagine it's going to play out. Like I say, nobody is going to be particularly excited to give up control of the St. Lawrence River, of which we, have a lot of stuff moves out of the Great Lakes. People don't realize it, but there's a lot of stuff that goes out there. I mean, there's iron, there's nickel. There's a lot of nickel. And all of that stuff has to travel up to St. Lawrence to get to markets unknown. Have I lost you guys? It's what happens when you ask me these questions. Yeah. But just one shipyard will change. Those things, ships take a long time. So if you can get out one a year, you're cranking them out, right? And we need a military. We need a navy. We have the longest coastline in the world, Donnie. We need a navy. I mean, right now, I was reading an article. Mark Carney wants to annex Transport Canada's airplanes to try to make them part of our national defense. I'm not sure if he's seen these airplanes, but he's that desperate to try to convince the world that Canada is spending money, that he's going to annex these. I don't know what kind of plane they are, but they're prop planes, for example. They're two-engine prop planes. They look like they could be converted to land on water, or they look like they might be able to lock it up and land on water. They're not fighter planes, is the point that I'm making. They're not like long-range bombers, or there's nobody going to be doing, paramilitary jumps out the back of them. But Mark Carney's desperate to try to tell the world that we have this strong, Canadian national defense. And I look at some of the ways that the Americans have money. And one of the ways is that they have freedom of speech, so that they're allowed to say ideas without being punished. They have capitalism, which allows for them to invest without being punished. Two things that our government does: punishes you for the things that you say and tries to punish you for having money. And they have the greatest, they have a massive navy, 14 aircraft carriers. So how we build those things matters. And I know that perhaps we don't necessarily have currently have the engineering expertise to build the insides. But we absolutely have the expertise to build the frame. We have the expertise to build all of the stuff to get it up and running. We might not have, the missile launcher guy or the computer guy that looks after how far and how all of that kind of stuff, the guts of the brains of the boat. But we definitely could build the rest of it. And that's exactly why I said put it in Lake Ontario. I say Lake Ontario only because Lake Ontario is the only one we have the entire thing of, right? But I mean, we could go into Superior or Erie even, and just kind of, I don't think Erie is the only one that's not part of it. Okay, so you get my point, though. We could build them along the coastline. And because, why would we move the steel very far if it's already right there, I get that you don't necessarily want to have 900 million people dropping in, making your town like downtown Toronto. I can respect that. But Ed Fritz, is that show still on? That's an excellent show. I haven't seen it in many, many years, but that's an excellent show. Anyway, I know I'm trying to fix the whole country, but that's only because the leadership that we have is not trying to fix the country. And we need to have a vision. We need to have a direction. We need to say to ourselves, step 1, step 2, step 3, like that. Because the damage is severe. when the dust finally settles of this liberal government, we are going to see that there's massive issues with fraud on our social systems. We are going to understand that there are more people in this country than we believe there are. Many of them have never held a job even in their old country. There's a lot of social issues that are going to be around as a result of these liberal policies and these far left lunatics. Neo Totem 88 for $5. Carney works for Hillary Clinton. He's nothing but a space cadet robbing taxpayers. He's recycling Al Gore's CO2 scam with the twist that will make him rich. He is absolutely trying to get himself rich. There's no denying that. I mean, have you read his book Values? You would understand. Holy moly, the guy he's out there. Kelly Baked 6987 $5. PJ Belt is trashing Danielle Smith, putting a divided in the consumers movement because he cannot see the big picture that she actually won this. Well, there's a lot of people out there. Like, I don't know who PJ Belt is, but the fact that he's trashing Danielle Smith because Danielle Smith is smarter than he is doesn't surprise me. I know that Danielle Smith did a great move today. Like what she did was everybody says, oh, it's going to be a pipeline. It's going to be this, it's going to be that. Nope. The victory is in the fact that the liberal government has admitted that the tanker ban and that the emissions cap and all the rest of it are the problem. PJ Belt probably can't see the woods for the trees. I don't know who it is, but maybe. Is that what it is? The de Havilland Otter? Yeah, it probably is. Nonetheless, I don't see how he's trying. Like, I get that they're good planes and all the rest of that, but I don't see that he would try to put them in our CAF and try to tell the NATO that all of a sudden we got a bigger air fleet. I mean, come on, man. But that's how desperate he is, right? Now, to go back to what you were saying, Kelly, I don't know who, I guess I could look him up, but he's, or she or they, whatever, is putting the cart before the horse. Like, they simply don't see the big picture. They don't understand that Danielle Smith's motive and movement was not designed to get a pipeline in the ground. She took a look at the problem and she found a way to exploit the situation to get one step over the line. And as a result of this movement by Mark Carney, the Liberal Party is imploding. And I'm telling you, this is great. I just wish that the NDP wouldn't wait so long to pick their leader, because then we could, have an election sooner. Like, I just wish they wouldn't wait so long. Like, I don't know why they waited until the spring. They could have done it in December or something like that, or January even. I don't know. Because it's not like they're out there campaigning. And it's going to be much easier for them to pull the scraps of their party back together if they have a solid selected leader. I mean, I don't care who it is. I think that for the conservative side of the aisle, the best choice for us is for that girl from Edmonton, whatever her name is, MP McPherson. She's the best choice for the conservatives because she hates it. She's full of hate, right? So she will attract a certain element, which can then be pulled away from the Liberal Party. There's nobody in the there's nobody in the conservative side of the aisle that's going to support that degree of hate that she has, especially for certain types of people. I mean, she's really deep in the DEI. So you can tell Mr. Belt or Mrs. Belt or whatever their name is that they're incorrect, that Danielle Smith is playing 4D chess on Mark Carney. He simply didn't see the move. And if he did see the move, he had no choice but to sign that memorandum of understanding, because Brookfield is pushing his buttons. You see, Brookfield is telling them that now we have moved into carbon capture, and now you must stop talking about how bad it is for carbon capture. Because if Mark Carney starts to say that carbon capture is horrible, that means the stock of Brookfield starts to take a hit on the stock market. And once the stock takes a hit, Mark Carney loses money personally, which of course is why, he shouldn't be in the job that he's in. That's the conflict of interest that many people on the conservative side of the aisle are talking about. I believe that Danielle Smith did the right thing. It was a great move. I know that even Pierre Poilievre might not see it directly, but the admission that the pipeline is hindered by the tanker ban, and the admission that the pipeline is hindered by the emissions cap and a couple of other things that are in the agreement, is all she was probably hoping to get. And it's enough. The conservatives have been saying it about the liberals for years. It was so severe that Stephen Guilbeault has left the cabinet, or has left his inner circle there. And the cabinet, yeah. So anyway, the point that I'm making is that I don't agree with Mr. Belt. I think Danielle Smith made the right move. I think that Danielle Smith move is the only way it could have been better is if she already had the agreement of the First Nations of British Columbia, like those 4 bands that currently haven't signed on to the agreement, and we could watch David Eby melt down. That would be so good. I mean, I cannot wait for his head to pop right off his shoulders, because he found out that Danielle Smith not only has a proponent, but she got all of the First Nations in British Columbia to agree. She already has 36 out of 40, right, of the bands along the route. And when she made her announcement today, there was 6 or 7 First Nations chiefs that were in the room with her. She acknowledged them directly. So I just can't wait to see when David Eby's, has to stand up at the microphone and say, well, Danielle Smith pulled it off, and now I'm going to go home and, cry about it. Sasquatch Chronicles. If you ever watched Trailer Park Boys, way back in the beginning, way back season 1 or 2, they used to call him Sam Squanch. Sasquatch, that was a great name. It's $4.99. It's been reported Elizabeth May is on her 4th box of Canadian wine after hearing about the memo of understanding. I believe that. Yeah, like Donnie says, okay, you now win the internet. I mean, she's got it on intravenous anyways, doesn't she? I think that there's always some sort of liquor just within easy grasp for that woman. What I was surprised to find out about Elizabeth May, I did a little bit of looking into her this year. She has an Order of Canada. She has one of those little white pins that you see Mark Carney wearing all the time. She has an Order of Canada for environmental books she wrote. I mean, in my mind, I was like, this girl has got an Order of Canada and she's an author? I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, she doesn't speak with much eloquence. She speaks with she's kind of rough around the edges when she talks. I guess that could be, different when maybe she has more eloquence when she puts it down on paper. I didn't read anything of hers. I'm a little bit offended that she has an Order of Canada, to be honest with you, which is, about as close to knighthood as you can get without being in an actual knight. So I don't even like watching Carney wear it. He kind of gets on my last nerves when he wears it. I don't know which order he has, like the iris of the flower, whatever, will tell what rank he is. There's 3 ranks, but the fact that Elizabeth May has one should tell you just how much caliber there's actually in it. It's like movie critics nowadays, right? They're all saying whatever they're told to say. Elizabeth May was the only thing that saved the budget for the Liberals. That was amazing. They all stood up and gave her a round of applause because they were pretending like they wanted that budget to pass. And they didn't want it to pass. And I was confirmed of that this week when I heard Mark Carney, I think on Tuesday, talk about how he made a jab at the Conservatives, how whichever one of them could make it into the room to cast a vote. The 2 that abstained. So the Liberal Party hasn't got much life left in them, guys. They don't have the drive. They don't have the wherewithal. They simply are not smart enough to pull this off. It's fine when nobody's looking. Maybe in 2015, nobody was looking and everybody was willing to vote on the soundbite. And everybody said, oh, Justin Trudeau looks really cute, so I think I'll vote for him. Now Canadians are hungry. They're homeless. Everything is 90% of their bills are going to their monthly payments. And they are watching closely on every move that people make, these politicians. They're watching the parliaments in the provinces, and they're watching the parliament in Ottawa. I tried to get them to tell me how many people tune into the question period, but they refuse. I was I wrote them an email. I was like, hey, can you tell me what your ratings are? And they were like, oh, no, we don't share that information. And I'm like, you're television and you don't share the information of your ratings? That's weird. I have a copy of how many people have watched me and how many people are commenting right in front of me. So I find it amazing that you don't, a channel that is like the parliament doesn't have can't keep track of how many are from what region are watching. But they refused. They were like, no, we're not doing it. So I was like, okay. And then I thought, well, I'll try to see if I can get the MP to find out for me, because I would love to know what the difference between how many people were watching in 2017 and how many people are watching now. I would be willing to bet that it's millions like the number is millions in difference. People watch it streamed now. There are some streamers out there that are getting 20,000 people watching it with them every day. So I mean, it's an interesting thought process or a thought exercise. I can't say if they vote liberal or they don't. I just know that they're watching. And I think that's something that we all need to start to talk about. I'm on their radar. They don't scare me. I am. What was it? Got me? You broke my train of thought. Oh, okay. So I think that one of the things that we on the conservative side of the aisle and the center and the center right, or the right and the center right, need to start doing is making sure that people vote. Like, you need to start shaming people for not voting. You're like, did you vote? And they're like, no. And you're like, man, you suck, or something like that. Like, you have to make them feel bad about not casting a vote, because that's what we need most of all in this country. We need the politicians to understand that every move they make, every hair they move on their head is being observed by somebody in this country. That Canadians are very politically savvy and that we turn out at a 90% vote rate. And the only reason that they didn't get 100% is because some people got stuck in a snowstorm, that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, that's the reason that, like, that's the kind of country we need to have. It doesn't matter where you're from. You just need to know, the politician needs to know that when they're talking to you, you're going to cast your vote. And that's something that we all need to be pressuring our neighbors and our friends and our random strangers in the coffee shop. Like, if I had a store on here, I would get a button, "Did you vote?" And I would like make it so people could just put that on there and they could see, make people think about the importance of casting a vote. Imagine how many people come to this country, struggle to get here, who in their life have never casted a vote, not even once had the right or the permission to vote for their politician. And here we in Canada take it for such granted that people don't even bother to turn out in numbers above 50%. And I think that one of the things that would help the cause of Canada would be to make our politicians, doesn't matter who it is, make them aware that they have to be held accountable to just about every individual they see walking down the road. Now, that's the kind of thing that would benefit all of us, no matter if you were liberal or NDP or conservative or even Bloc for that matter. Though I don't imagine the Bloc cares too much about what they think about them in Calgary. They certainly do care what they think about them in Laval. So they do have their, the chink in their armor nonetheless, right? That's a kind of thing that we need to sort of worry about in this country. You have to make sure that your neighbor knows. And I get it. You're a conservative or you're center right. You don't really want to push your politics onto people. But this isn't pushing your politics. This is telling them that you feel that they should have exercised their right to express their politics with casting their vote. I mean, if the Communist Party of Canada can get votes, there's no reason why we shouldn't all be out in, doing our casting our vote so that we can pick our next leader. And that's one of the things that the liberal side of the aisle gets. The left, they vote. If it could be a hurricane, they'll go out and vote in it. We have to have the same sort of enthusiasm. We have to stop telling ourselves, somebody will take care of it. We have to say, no, I need to do my part. It's, I'm obligated to this country to cast my vote. You have to accept the way the chips lie, like who wins, who loses, all that. You can't be too upset about it. But you absolutely have the right. I mean, I shouldn't say it like that. You have the right to complain about it, but you have to accept it, right? So there's the kind of politics that, they used to really turn out. Every country in the world, when you casted a vote, turnout was like 75, 80%. And then all of a sudden it just kept dropping off. And now there are some countries that are in the 30%. Can you imagine? 70% of the people that vote in the country they choose not to vote. It's like, man, so really you're like you're letting all of the crazy people pick your positions. Doesn't matter what kind of crazy they are, you know, like whether they be on the right or the left or whatever it happens to be in the center, it doesn't matter. You're allowing them to make their decisions because you couldn't get up and go for casting one vote every couple of years. Seems weird in my mind. Like, it seems strange that people don't see it with the significance that I see it. So I say that to you, to anybody out there that's listening to me right now. Make sure that when people try to talk to you about politics, or when you see people that, or you're over here or you're asking them directly, you don't say, who did you vote for? You just say, did you vote? And that's all you have to ask them. Did you vote? Because you should have voted. Because you owe it to the country to vote. You owe it to yourself to vote. You owe it to your family to vote. So on and so forth. So that they will vote. Because I want people to vote. Even my mother stopped watching cable TV. She's 86. Well, she can watch my channel. I am very clean. Like, I don't swear. She can watch. Tell her to, you know what? Just fire it up on her YouTube. If she doesn't know how to change the channel, that's fine. There's lots of me. Plenty of me to go around. You can just continue to watch it over and over, and I will do my best to entertain anybody who's watching, just like I'm trying to entertain right now. Hit the like. That's right, Donnie. Thanks. I appreciate that. Yes, you have to vote. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't care who you vote for. I just want you to vote. Like, I'm serious about that, because that's, and I'll tell you something. The thing you have to remember is when the Liberal government brings these people into the country, and by these people I mean anybody coming from anywhere, many of them are not familiar with our politics. Many of them are not familiar with even being allowed to vote. So they will get a person to swing by the van load and take them all to the polling station and just tell them, look, you'll see that logo. Just cast your vote for that. You know, the person, they're not going in the room. They're not breaking any laws. They're simply driving them there and driving them home because they don't know any better. They will do whatever they're not told, but what they're recommended by the person they think that is keeping them in the country. If it happens to slip out while they're driving there, that the Conservatives want to kick you out, or that the NDP wants to, you know, I don't know what it is, take your children away or whatever, you know, just anything to scare them is what I mean. Like, just like, you know, anything to scare them to give the vote to the party that's driving them there. So the point I'm making as it pertains to, you know, get out, make sure you get out and vote, is that these are individuals who don't know any better, and they're being permitted to cast a vote, not based on the education or of their knowledge of the area or their knowledge of Canadian politics, or even how the vote that they're casting is going to benefit their people that are out to get them, that are utilizing them and using them. But they're just casting the vote more than other people who live in the country, like who live here, who are born here, who know better, right? Who understand exactly what the politics are. They understand. I saw an interview with a fellow there the other day, which I'm probably going to react to, young guy, and he felt almost apologetic because he was in the center. Like, you could try to, I'm not a young guy. I mean, like, you know, university, college student like that. And in my head, I'm thinking, man, I'm always in the center. I'm in the center. Well, I'm center right because I believe in fiscal responsibility. Like, I understand when your country has money, you get a lot of stuff. When your country has no money, well, you can see the cuts that the Liberal Party is making. The cuts. That's all they're doing. All of the processes and all the programs that they promised are all turned to pot because they cannot afford to pay for them. So the only way that you're going to be able to afford to pay for them is to vote for the Conservative side, because the Conservatives are going to balance the budget. Once the budget is balanced, then there's all kinds of money to throw around. Once the budget is balanced, we can start to put money in the bank. Once we have money in the bank, nothing to it, then we can start to pay off for electric cars or whatever it is you like to do. It's just people want to borrow against the children, right? The left seems to think that they can spend right now, and that the kids that are coming up behind them, well, it's their problem, not the adult who borrowed the money. Just like the teachers in Alberta who are like, you need to give me $250,000 a year to be a teacher in elementary school, like you're raising a doctor or something. And now they're upset and they're trying to do that recall vote, which is just stupid. And I'm probably going to do something about, like, I'm going to do content on that. I have more ideas for content than I have time, it seems like. Yeah, fear and shame, exactly. And that's the trick that they always want to use, right? Especially the fear. That's why you hear them try to do the sound bites like, oh, they hate immigration, or oh, they want to evict immigration. And it's like, well, we kind of want to have immigration that works, because right now we have a homelessness problem. Many of the people that are homeless are immigrants. We have people living 25 deep to a basement apartment. Again, many of those individuals are from other countries. And I've said it 100 times. I don't blame the individual from the other country. They are struggling to survive. What can you do, right? You're focused on making sure you get paid. Let's remember that a lot of people who come to this country looking for jobs are sending a lot of money home, like as much money as they can back to people that they know in their old country. So they're preoccupied. But that doesn't mean that we should be permitting the Liberal government to terrify them or exploit them into voting for something that's not in their best interest. And the only way that we can make sure that culturally that we begin that process is to start shaming people for not casting their vote. In my opinion, I mean, I'm not the end all be all, but I think that this is something we have to, I'm not saying, again, I'm not telling you don't tell them who to vote for. Just tell them to make sure that they voted. Need totem $2 says they have to go back home. Well, I mean, they went through a lot to get here, and a lot of people back home are counting on them. And, especially when you consider, like, say, India, it's interesting, the caste system, which I probably should talk about. It's an interesting process, this caste system. India has a very bad, they have what's called disparaging wealth distribution. They make more money than we do. They have a GDP of nearly $4 trillion. They make twice what we make. But the average individual, the median income is like $3,000, because all of the money goes to the top people at the top, and they don't really care to have or develop a middle class. So many of them are just trying to not be broke anymore, not to be living and grown up in abject poverty. Most of them will never go back there. It'll be their grandkids who miss it, right? It'll be their grandkids who are like, oh, my family's from there, let me go back. But without ever realizing that their grandparents left it because it was it treated them horribly. Now, the system, the way the government lays it out, is wrong. That needs to be fixed. And that's why we have to worry about how they cast their vote. Because, let's be straightforward. Draining our, $140 a day they get for rent, $85 a day to eat. I mean, there are people that are 20 generations in this country that don't get that kind of handout from the government. I was watching a clip today on Shorts, I think. And like they were saying how they were cutting the pension back for the CAF to $1,200 a month. And then the person comes here as a newborn, or not a newborn, but as a newly landed immigrant, and claims to be from the LGB. After you do all the different things that you're eligible for, it's $5,000. So you could see that that's a flaw in the system. However, there absolutely should be inexpensive places for them to live, and there absolutely should be an ability for them to get a job, because we have the room in this country. What we don't have is leadership that is trying to solve these problems. They're only trying to make them worse. I'm not saying to you that we shouldn't have controlled immigration. I'm absolutely not saying that. But I am saying that individuals that made it here, if they haven't broken any laws, we have to try to help them out to get to the promise of Canada, to take Pierre Poilievre's words. Now, if they are not here yet, or if they break the law when they're here, there should be no delay in that. You break the law, I don't even want to hear about it. You're out. See ya. You got to go. That's the thing that is the big difference between now and then. In my day, when you broke the law, you were deported. But now they just don't do that anymore. And now they just say, oh, it must be all the system's fault. You know, the system's fault that this guy's been in the country, in Canada for 4 months and he's decided to steal 2 cars. It's somehow the system's fault. Like, it's a lot of manipulation going on there because they know that they can convince those guys to vote for them by simply giving them a ride. So maybe what I should be trying to convince people to do is give people rides. I don't know. I'm just talking because I see so many problems in this country. And I think that when I think about it, it seems to me that one of the biggest problems that we on the right, on the center and on the right have is we're far too accepting of many of these things, right? We're far too complacent. We don't want to push the fact that people need to vote. Let's be honest. If you're not on the left, they don't really talk to you anyway. So most of the people that you're going to be speaking to are going to be people that will vote with their heads, with their conscience, not just because of the DEI aspect of it or whatever they're calling it nowadays. Who knows what the name, what letters they're using now. So I get that there's an immigration problem, especially in big sections of the country. I don't see that the immigration itself is the problem. I see that the way the government takes care of it as being the problem. And it's beneficial to the government for those immigrants to be struggling, because while they're struggling, they're willing to listen to anything that the government says, including, oh, if you don't vote for us, you know, you're going to be on the next plane out of here or the next boat out of here or whatever it is they're trying to say. And that's the kind of thing that is like, like if I was a liberal, I would be ashamed of myself to do that to somebody. Like, just tell the truth. Just be honest. They can't use honesty, of course, because honesty would mean that they would not get elected, which is, you know, everybody on this channel probably is well aware of. All right, it's getting time. I'm winding down here, guys. Yeah, that is true. That's why I keep talking about making jobs, because, hey, Bernie, how are you? Because, well, Marianne, drink Walter. The thing of it is that that's the problem, right? We can't be too, like, I believe we should be careful on who we continue to bring in, but we can't be just saying, oh, anybody that's here has to go, unless you break the law. Like, the second you're arrested, you should be, you know what? If you didn't kill anybody or do anything like against their person, like if you just like stole a car, forget it. I don't even want to worry about you going to court. Just simply take them and put them on whatever it is and deport them. They broke the law, get out. I don't care how old you are. I don't care any of that. You broke the law, get out. And that's the kind of thing that we can do to rebuild this culture. Because once these big projects like the pipeline get going, then they will be talking to people like me about magnetic levitation. And then we will need the bodies. We will need as many young men as we can get our hands on, because working the oil patch or working in hydroelectricity is grueling work. Yes, the truck is sexy, and yes, they get good paychecks, but they get banged up. They get scuffed knuckles, and they get sore backs, and they get banged up doing those jobs. And we will need them to be able to do those jobs. And then once they're in the country, they'll build houses out of the town, and we will have a population that can expand and can grow. And then they'll develop pride to be Canadian, and so on and so forth. Like, it's a domino effect. Unfortunately, right now, many of them are being misled by the government. And that's the problem that we need to address. We need to say, okay, listen, if we can get control of it, we can say, okay, we're closing all the doors until we get our housing problem fixed. And then when we have everybody settled down and we're working together and all in unison, then the question can be revisited. I say to you, not that we don't have an immigration issue. We definitely do. And that's manufactured intentionally. Look at all of the countries in the West. Every last one of them have one thing in common. They all have far left governments that have allowed immigration to get out of control. And then they have rising crime rates and they have rising other rates, all of them. So, when people say to me that it's probably by design, I can see how they can arrive at that conclusion. We, however, can get a hold of it. We can see from the example of a number of countries, including the United States, but China most notably, that we can, in fact, not China, Japan, but though China is a good example. Japan, though, is a democratic country that has a strict immigration policy. And so we can see that there is a possibility to get a hold of it. And once we've turned the taps off, then we just clean up the mess that this liberal government left us with. And to a large extent, the NDP. Let's not forget Jagmeet Singh propped up this government for years. But then once we get a hold of it, that's it. The problem will be settled down and we'll be like, okay, now we can start to look at fixing reutilizing the old immigration system, the one that worked so well for so long, which brought in numbers at a controlled pace and kept track of everybody and all of that kind of stuff. But we have to, it's up to us, guys. We're the ones doing it. We have to throw our support behind politicians like Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith. We have to let them know that we got their back, like that they are doing decisions that we agree with. And I get that a lot of people don't necessarily understand the implications of what Danielle Smith did with getting the memorandum of understanding signed. And hopefully they've come around. Maybe you could direct them this way and they could hear some of the words that I've said about it. I talked about it right at the beginning of the stream. I just think that I'm not saying to you to do it blindly, but I'm saying to you that Danielle Smith's moves are a really good way, a step towards getting Mark Carney out of office. And you can tell by the way the Liberal government acted today that it's getting closer to that. So now he's losing support in his own government. He's losing support in British Columbia. He's losing support, in Quebec. The only thing he seems to have any support left with is Brookfield and Nova Scotia. Anyway, guys, I've been on here for a couple hours now. And though I enjoy it, I want to thank you for listening. Everybody give me a 1 so that we can say have a good night. Hey, look, can I say something? Hey, look at that. I can say something. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap for tonight. Thanks for listening. I'm probably going to try to go live again on Monday this time. I don't know how you get out of here. Oh, there it is. On Monday, because I enjoy it. I know I'm a bit of an amateur at it, but I'll get better. And the only way to get better is, of course, to have more practice. So I'm thinking that I'll probably try to do it again on Monday. But that's not to mean that I'm not going to try to continue to put up all of the content. I know it's been a slow month, but it's an up and down. I'm going to be doing better at it. I'm going to go full time and I'm going to get more content. That's why I started doing the shorts right from my phone. I'm like, whatever, I don't care what I'm wearing. Let's talk, All right. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you next time.